Idaho Matters podcast is brought to you by St. Luke's On-Demand Virtual Care, which allows patients to see a provider from their home using a computer or smartphone with on-demand care for common ailments, such as a cough, sore throat, or a sinus issue. More information at stlukesonline.org.
Stay informed with Boise State Public Radio's weekly newsletter. Delivered every Tuesday morning, it brings you the latest local news on politics, the environment, arts, and culture. Plus, get highlights from Idaho Matters and the Mountain West News Bureau. Sign up today at boisestatepublicradio.org.
From the studios of Boise State Public Radio News, I'm Gemma Gaudette. This is Idaho Matters. In November, BoiseDev.com reported that Idaho remains one of the most unaffordable housing markets for middle-income buyers nationwide, and that only a little more than 5% of homes on the market were actually affordable for families with an income of $75,000. Now, this month, Boise Dev also reported that rental costs have gone up almost 2% this year. And it's no secret that Idaho has a housing problem, and solutions, well, they're hard to find. A new coalition, the Gem State Housing Alliance, wants to make it easier to build more homes for Idahoans. And they're actually gathering this week to look at how and where to focus their efforts in 2026. So here to tell us more about this are Ali Rabi, Gem State Housing Alliance Executive Director, Shellen Rodriguez, owner and founder of SMR Development, architect Byron Falwell, Rick Miller, Altura's Director of Community Development, and Bob Seal, the Community Development Director for Post Falls. I want to welcome all of you to Idaho Matters.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you, Gemma. Glad to be here.
Thanks.
And Ali, let me begin the conversation with you. Talk to us about how bad the housing problem really is in Idaho.
As you cited in the statistics that Boise Dev has recently reported on, only 5% of middle-income folks across Idaho can afford to purchase a home. And at the same time, the rental market is really strained as well. Rent prices have increased by 40% just over the last several years. And Idaho is now considered the second least affordable market in the United States by the National Realtors Association. What we're saying as a group is housing costs are expensive because of policy choices we are making or not making. This is a solvable problem, and we have some ideas around solutions to hopefully create more housing of different types and sizes and build more homes for Idahoans that folks can afford, so we can get more folks, especially being able to purchase their first home here in Idaho.
So, Ali, why did you want to create this new Gem State Housing Alliance?
Everyone in Idaho has been talking about housing for years, it being one of the most, if not the most pressing challenge every community in Idaho is dealing with right now. And so we got together a group of people last year talking about what would an advocacy group look like for Idaho. We received grant funding to start that group from the Welcoming Neighbors Network. And so we were able to get that going this year. We did a statewide listening tour with more than 150 Idahoans, talking with them about, hey, we have this funding, we have this group now, what should we focus on, and kind of coalesce that into what we now have on our website as a policy agenda that we are working with the cities on implementing.
So, Ali, tell us who makes up the Alliance.
The Alliance is made up with a lot of different people. We have our board of directors, as well as a very diverse policy advisory board that has people from all different industries. It includes housing advocates, just people that have worked to build coalitions in their community to support more housing getting built. We have housing practitioners of all different types, including the folks on this call, architects, developers, planners, people that have had experiences, especially building smaller homes and doing more infill. We also have more large developers that have built big suburban neighborhoods, multifamily. And then, other than that, it's just a lot of people, I think, that are excited to join. We are just launching the coalition this week. So we're hoping more people will join us and help us implement our goals in the years to come.
So, Shellen, let me bring you into the conversation. Tell us about SMR development and what your organization does.
Sure. SMR is a small kind of boutique firm located here in Boise, and our focus is on workforce and affordable housing. So we do sort of everything from develop along, as joint ventures with other developers. We will take on different roles in affordable and workforce housing. And then we also work with public and nonprofits to do kind of help them strategize from a policy level what they can do locally to help prioritize the type of housing that they want. And I do that with communities all over the Western United States, not just here in Idaho, which I think is probably part of the reason that that I was asked to join this board. And I'm really happy to be here.
And Byron, you're an architect, as I mentioned. Can you talk to us about how your work ties into the goals of the Alliance?
Sure. Yeah. So like Shellen mentioned, I'm a boutique firm myself, a one-man architecture firm, and I kind of specialize in historic preservation, but also missing middle housing, or what we call missing middle housing. So that's housing types from duplexes, triplexes, and fourplexes to cottage courts and small multifamily structures that fit into most, Boise neighborhoods. So for me, it's important that as we grow well, and that what we're doing with housing advocacy sort of mirrors what we want to see in our city and in our neighborhoods, so that we grow well. We grow kind of incrementally, and we grow the kind of housing that Boiseans need. So I'm kind of, specifically interested in the zoning code moves that we can make in order to incentivize that kind of housing, but also the housing forms and how we can incentivize ownership and local rentals as well.
And Rick, talk to us about Altura and what you do.
Yes, thank you. I'm Rick Miller, Director for Community Development, and Altura is also known legally as East Central Planning Development Association. We're an economic development district that covers 9 counties of southeast Idaho. Primarily, we work, at least on the community development side, with communities on infrastructure improvement projects, everything from water and sewer improvements, as well as downtown revitalization, housing, low-income housing projects or plans, in helping try to get funding or infrastructure to those, specifically housing, specifically to those sites. We work closely with cities and counties in this, as well as some private entities as well.
And Bob, you're a community development director. Talk to us about your position and what you do.
Yeah, so I'm the community development director for the city of Post Falls, and we're the 9th largest city in Idaho. We're often overshadowed by our neighboring city of Coeur d'Alene, but we're growing at a faster rate and anticipate being larger than Coeur d'Alene within the next 10 years or so. We're working on balancing the zoning regulations with the community's desires for how growth is happening and occurring across our prairie and in their inner city areas. We've seen that the term density is a bad word, and we're still trying to adapt around that and provide new ways for developing smaller lot sizes, to encourage those smaller homes that could potentially meet the market demands for those middle income housing or individuals. And so we're trying to work as well with the local coalitions up here. We have the Housing Solutions partnership that I've been part of since it formed about 6 years ago, and that kind of dovetails into the work that Gem State is trying to achieve as well. So I'm happy to be part of this group.
So Bob, talk to us about what affordable housing is looking like in Post Falls and the issues that Post Falls is facing. I mean, it sounds like you too need to create more housing.
Yeah, absolutely. Affordable housing, we've stopped using the term affordable, especially when it comes to home ownership. We've tried to find different ways. How do we describe it? It's more, is it attainable housing? Is it middle income housing? It's a struggle for Kootenai County residents to be able to afford to buy a home
these days. There was a recent study that was done that indicated that only 20% of the median income worker workers within Kootenai County can actually afford to buy a house in today's market. So unless you have a house already, it's really tough to get into one. We've been trying to, provide development opportunities for folks to build these smaller cottage type homes. We've developed mixed zoning districts, but it's a struggle for everyone around here, unless, and even when it comes to apartments, the prices have gone, nearly doubled in 5 or 6 years, it seems like.
So, Allie, let's talk concrete examples of what the Alliance is hoping to do. So, Bob mentioned smaller homes. Can you talk to us about this a bit? Because there are a lot of places, not just in Idaho, that there are bans on these small homes.
A lot of people don't know that smaller homes are illegal to build in many parts of Idaho. Byron talked about middle housing, and that's really what we're talking about, is everything in between of what we currently build, which is multifamily on one side and large single family homes in suburban neighborhoods that primarily sprawl out our communities on the other side.
Mm-hmm.
There are all kinds of different sizes and types of homes that architects can design and that builders want to build. But because many of our zoning codes have not been updated since the 1970s, those homes are illegal to build in most of our residential zones in Idaho. They're also extremely difficult to build. Usually they require additional permitting processes or approvals that can really add cost and make them not pencil, essentially.
So, Allie, it sounds like not only is part of this, let's try to remove some of these bans, but it seems like there's a lot of red tape when it comes to building. So, is that something else you're trying to work through?
Yeah, definitely want to remove bans on smaller homes so that we can have more attainable home ownership options for Idahoans, and we can have homes here that are $250,000 that folks can buy. We also want to work with cities to remove red tape and regulatory burdens more generally, which does cost a lot for developers in various ways. So just making development simpler will allow housing to be cheaper because it will take costs off of a developer's pro forma, essentially.
So, Ellie, let's say you do all of this. You remove these bans, you get rid of red tape. What about where homes would be built? And I ask this because it seems that, in order for a home to be affordable, you have to keep moving farther and farther outside of like your core city limits where a lot of people work. So how does that then play into where homes should be built? And is your alliance going to address that? Because you can build homes, but that doesn't mean that if someone works in a downtown core, but they live 30 miles away, is that reasonable and realistic?
So building smaller homes close to jobs will allow for basically more home buying options for lower and moderate income working families in Idaho. There is a lot of vacant land and land that could be used for infill if we could build smaller homes closer to jobs. There's also quite a bit of vacant land in commercial zones in Idaho. The American Enterprise Institute has estimated that Idaho could build at least 12,000 additional starter homes each year if it use vacant land that's currently not unused in commercial zones in Idaho for either mixed use or to build homes. So that would allow for us to build homes closer to jobs as well. There is quite a bit of vacant land. I think anyone could drive around their neighborhood or their city and kind of look and see, wow, there's some empty space right there. Or, hey, that home has a lot that maybe could be split. We just aren't really capitalizing on those opportunities because of policy choices that we're making.
How does infrastructure play into this, Allie? And not just, let's say in Boise, but really infrastructure challenges in cities across the state?
Infrastructure is one of the biggest challenges for cities right now for a lot of different reasons that I won't get into. But one challenge is that many communities have sprawled out such that they're now tasked with maintaining a lot of infrastructure that developed very quickly, which is straining a lot of city budgets. One thing we're advocating for is building cities in rather than out can actually support and mitigate infrastructure costs in the short and long term. It also can reduce taxes for Idahoans in the short and long term because they're not paying as much to build roads and piping and schools and firefighters and all the things that we need as communities sprawl out. So definitely advocating to build things in, and just we want to also support cities to try to address infrastructure challenges, recognizing it is a huge challenge as much as we can.
So, Allie, you want the Alliance to connect businesses, nonprofits, and policymakers together. So, if you're able to do that, how does that help the housing market?
It's simple. Supply and demand is kind of our belief and approach. And we think that the opportunities are there to build more housing of different types and sizes in areas and land that we already have here in Idaho. And so just making those connections between cities and policymakers, especially those that are newer and maybe in smaller cities that don't think about housing all day like housing practitioners, but connecting them with our alliance with housing practitioners that want to build certain types of homes in their community for their workforce, and helping educate them about the possibilities to address this challenge, I think is something we hope to do, while also providing pro-housing Idahoans an opportunity to have a voice and plugging into actions and requests of cities, localities that we're going to be making.
Rick, you work with both private and public agencies when it comes to planning and development. Talk to us about the importance of these particular kinds of partnerships.
Sure. And it varies. One thing we see in the communities is, especially in East Idaho, same as throughout Idaho, just huge amounts of growth. Some of our counties over here are seeing more growth than they ever have, and higher percentages. But we do see those areas where the partnership between public and private has become key to making some of these issues at least become minimized. Some of our communities that have partnered between a city or a builder have actually been able to open up many doors to increase the ability of housing that's attainable for their residents. It's always fun to see different communities. They all have different flair that they want to keep, but also many that are understanding we still have to build the housing that fits for all residents in those communities. So there's a key important ingredient that partnership has to happen in these communities.
And Rick, is it important too, when it comes to these private agencies in particular, to have them, truly understand the need for affordable housing and really how they can be a part, of creating that, and not just for profit, right? But that I would think that this has a positive impact on an entire community when agencies come together and make this happen.
Right. Right. Yeah. And we're seeing that more. A lot of these businesses, anywhere from communities that we have where large mining industries or recreation, ski resorts, they have started to be able to recognize, hey, we've got to be partnering with the communities on this housing, because there's so much of that workforce they rely on that needs that housing. When they can't get it, they can't get the workforce. And we've seen some great success stories, happen in some of these cities and counties where this is occurring. And so we want to continue to foster that and work with the cities to make sure that good policy allows for that type of growth to happen.
Well, and Rick, you make such a good point, right? You mentioned ski resorts, and this is something that even in this side of the state that we see with the Wood River Valley, with the McCall area, right? That you have these recreational cities that rely a lot on recreation, but yet if you don't have housing for workers, I mean, these businesses will suffer. So is that part of the conversation as well? Is really kind of getting down to that nitty gritty of your businesses will not thrive if there is not housing.
Yeah, exactly. And like I said, some communities are more open to it than others we've seen that we work with. But those that are open to making it worth and getting their policies in line that will work with those businesses, because it affects everybody in the community. And so that's one thing I think with Gem State Housing Alliance is the ability to offer some assistance and guidance on ways to make that work. So everyone, businesses, private industry, whatever that may be, that it can help facilitate housing for anyone in the community.
So, Shellen, in your opinion, why is it important to be connecting developers with policymakers as well as nonprofits like this new Gem State Housing Alliance?
Sure. Thanks, Gemma. It's a good question. And I think that, it goes back to public-private partnership. And, what I always say is, as part of the supply and demand of housing occurs, and as demand increases and if supply doesn't keep up, affordable housing is left behind, right? So when that happens, it's up in part to policymakers to help bring in developers, help decrease the barriers that developers may perceive and may actually exist. And I say that purposefully, in the sense that many of these policy decisions could be money, right? They could be costly to communities, and many of them may not be at all. Just decreasing things like response times or the processes associated with certain types of applications, inspection times. There's sort of some low-hanging fruit that both public and private in public and private partnerships can exist and create more affordable housing more quickly.
And Allie, the Alliance is offering cities in Idaho models and technical assistance if they want to change their zoning codes or take a new look at their housing policies. Can you talk a bit about that and how that would help create, more affordable housing?
We are offering our services to Idaho cities, and we have been in communication with elected officials all over Idaho just for the past few months. We've been working behind the scenes and kind of figuring out what their needs are and where the opportunities are in their codes. I will say elected officials in Idaho want to address this challenge, and there is will to make some positive changes. It's just about getting the information, tools, resources that they need, while also helping engage the public on this challenge. One big barrier to creating more housing that elected officials have talked to me about is anti-growth mindsets and folks that want to either slow or stop growth in Idaho, which just isn't a realistic opportunity. Unfortunately, folks are going to keep moving here. This is a wonderful place to live, and we're going to continue to see our communities change. So we hope that we can also help engage the public by lifting up pro-housing voices and helping folks understand why this is needed, and along the way, helping elected officials adopt the plans that they want to adopt to improve housing policy.
Allie, are there any cities in Idaho right now that are making these types of changes when it comes to zoning codes or new housing policies?
I know a lot of cities are considering opportunities right now. We just went through a big election. We got a lot of new mayors and new city council members all over Idaho. So they'll be sworn in January. A lot of comprehensive plan updates have been made by those cities just over the last year, even last couple years. And there's a lot of work to be done to align their zoning codes with their comprehensive plan updates, which we think a lot of the comprehensive plan updates that have been made are pretty positive. It's just about aligning those policies in practice with their code and the developments that are coming online for cities.
Well, what about the city of Garden City, Allie? Because every time I'm in that area, I mean, first off, the amount of housing that's just continues to come up, but it's dense. It's density housing. I am going to make the assumption that this has not just happened out of the blue, that there was thought about how Garden City should move forward?
I actually live in Garden City, so funny you should bring that up. And I've been talking to new mayor Bill Jacobs and some of the new or existing city council members as well in Garden City. And they have done work over the last several years to create more starter homes. They were one of the first partners with NeighborWorks that created some really cool pocket neighborhoods in the city, and it's created some first-time home buying opportunities. The challenge for Garden City is land is a lot more expensive than it used to be because they have developed so much, but they do still have land and opportunities to create more of those starter homes or multifamily in the city. But yeah, it's changed a lot in recent years and will continue to. It's prime real estate that folks previously overlooked right on the Greenbelt and Boise River.
So, Bob, talk to us about how important zoning laws are when it comes to creating more housing in places like Post Falls, where you live.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and it kind of a topic that came up earlier was the fact that in a lot of different communities, smaller homes are illegal. That was one of the first things that I did when I came here seven years ago was work to eliminate the minimum square footage for a home. At that time, we didn't allow for homes under 800 square feet. And I know 800 square feet is small, but being able to provide that opportunity made sense. And what really startled me when we were doing an impact fee study recently is the fact that the average size of homes built in Post Falls over the past 5 or 6 years was 2,600 square feet. You go back 30 years and the average home was 1,500 square feet. Go back 50 or 60 years and that average size was 1,000 square feet. So what are we doing today? We're building large homes that only a certain proportion of the population can afford. What we're seeing is a lot of people moving in from out of the area. They come in with a lot of equity, whether it's from the west side of Washington, Oregon, or California. They come in with their equity and they're able to afford these homes. It's the locals that are unable to afford these homes. And the zoning code being able to provide the opportunity for smaller lot sizes was key, in the fact that if you have a smaller lot size, you're able to fit more homes on a particular piece of land. In Post Falls, the majority of our annexations and rezones for development are small 5 to 10 acre pieces of land. And if you can fit, under the standard R1 zone, only 16 homes on one of these 5 acre parcels, what happens if you're able to suddenly fit 28, by reducing those minimum lot sizes. So that's where we've been focusing our efforts on recently, is reducing the minimum lot size for single family homes. And we've seen a handful of annexations, probably a total of around 50 acres or so, spread around the periphery of the city, or even actually in city pockets that were actually county that are surrounded by city over the past year. And I look forward to seeing how those develop out with their modest size homes. I will say modest because that probably means they're under 2,000 square feet, most likely. And on a smaller lot size, and what affordability range will they hit? The median housing price in Post Falls is currently sitting around $525,000. So I'm hoping, and what we are seeing is that these are coming in under that, whether it's $75,000 or $100,000 less than the median price. So that's where we're at.
And Bob, and Bob, it's fascinating when you talk about the fact that it was illegal to build a home that was less than 800 square feet, because that's small. But I mean, you could have a small family in a home that size. What has been some of the pushback, I guess, in your area when it has come to making that change of allowing and zoning for smaller homes? And as you said, that makes them more affordable as well.
Right. And I will say that, our council has been very receptive to these changes because they recognize that their constituents need options and opportunities. We do get pushback from those people that don't want this type of development in their backyard. And they see it as squishing in a bunch of people into smaller spaces. But one of the things that comes along with a lot of our zoning requirements is also comes along with some open space. We have a new cottage home development standards that we've created that if you want to build, homes that are under 1,400 square feet on even smaller lot sizes, you have to be able to provide some green space, some open space. And so it does provide the opportunity for pocket parks. But the pushback really, the general public just doesn't, a lot of the times they just don't want to see change. And that's kind of what it comes down to is some of these folks moved here. And a lot of the pushback comes from those that have moved here in the recent past. The majority of the people that I hear from have been here less than 10 years. And they moved here for a reason and they want it to stay that way. I was born and raised in northern Idaho. I was born and raised around here, and I have seen the growth and the changes that have occurred over the last few decades. And I love the opportunities that we're seeing here, be able to provide a variety of home types. And you are right, it is not too hard to fit a family into 800 square feet. It can happen. One of my first homes was only 974 square feet, and I had 2 kids, and it worked just fine.
So Byron, as an architect, I'm curious about smaller homes. From your perspective, I mean, is it difficult to build smaller homes? And I ask that because there just seems to be this perception of, again, livability. But I would think, you just have to maybe be a little bit more creative in how you create a smaller home.
Yeah, Gemma, design challenge accepted. I love designing smaller homes. It's one of my favorite things to do. I grew up in a smaller home, and the controls are a little bit different, especially since we aren't doing the suburban sprawl development model anymore. Finding places for these smaller homes to fit is a little bit of a challenge, but as Ali was saying earlier, we do have vacant land available, but we do have to get kind of creative with the ways in which we create new building lots for these small homes. If they're going to be starter homes, then they need to be a for sale home, so they need to be on their own lot. But small homes can take a variety of forms, whether that's a cottage court, cottage village development, or pocket neighborhood. It's going to take all of us kind of working together to find those creative design solutions to provide the smaller homes to Boiseans and Idahoans at large.
And Ali, you're going to be talking about what you hope to do in 2026 during this coming week. Can you give us an idea of what you're hoping this new alliance can accomplish in the coming year?
We want to work in at least 5 cities in our first year in various ways to help cities enact more pro-housing policies and allow more housing to get built. Whatever that looks like, we definitely want to tailor approaches to political will and realities, as well as just challenges that cities are dealing with, like I said, with infrastructure. So want to tailor approaches to at least 5 cities in our first year. We also want to try to initiate and lift up coalitions in at least 3 cities in our first year to allow for pro-housing Idahoans to have a voice and start to get more involved and engaged in these policies and processes for how they're changed. Finally, we just want to try to reach and educate as many Idahoans as we possibly can on this topic and grow our coalition in our first year, and just helping, again, provide some kind of umbrella for these conversations that have been happening across the state for the last several years without a lot of action or change. So we're excited to just kind of bring together all of the conversations that have been happening about housing and orient them towards targeted action.
Well, I want to thank all of you so much for this conversation today. It is so critically important that not only we're having it, but that action is being taken. So thank you all very much. And we've been speaking today with Ali Rabi. She's the Gem State Housing Alliance Executive Director, Shellen Rodriguez, owner and founder of SMR Development, architect Byron Falwell, and Rick Miller, Altura's Director of Community Development, and Bob Seal, who is the Community Development Director for the city of Post Falls. We have been talking about a new coalition. It's the Gem State Housing Alliance, and it wants to make it easier to build more homes for Idahoans. As we mentioned, they are gathering this week to look at how and where to focus those efforts in the coming year. And that'll do it for this episode of Idaho Matters. Thanks so much for listening. And just a reminder, you can find all of our episodes wherever you get your podcasts.
How does AI even work? Where does creativity come from? What's the secret to living longer? TED Radio Hour explores the biggest questions with some of the world's greatest thinkers. They will surprise, challenge, and even change you. Listen to NPR's TED Radio Hour wherever you get your podcasts.